We are also following breaking news. Ghislaine Maxwell will serve 20 years in prison for sex trafficking. A federal judge announcing that sentence within the last hour. Now, Maxwell was convicted of helping to recruit young girls to be abused by her longtime associate, Jeffrey Epstein, back in December. The judge saying, quote, "The damage done to these girls was incalculable." NBC News correspondent for investigations Tom Winter has been following this case from the start. He is live outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan today. Tom, Maxwell did speak in the courtroom before learning her sentence today. What did she say?
Yeah, and a tough sentence that it was, with the judge going above the guideline range to sentence her to 20 years in jail, more than was initially called for, and hitting her with maximum fines. The statements from Maxwell today, as you said, really the first time that we've heard from her in a substantial fashion since this entire case began, which is not entirely surprising. But what she said did surprise some people in court. She did acknowledge the tremendous emotional testimony that these women provided to the court today for all the abuses that they've gone through and all the abuse that they say they've suffered since. Talking about psychological abuse, talking about substance abuse, talking about multiple attempts at suicide, because the things that Maxwell and Epstein put them through. In her own words, Maxwell saying today, "It is my sincerest wish to all those in this courtroom that this day brings a terrible chapter to an end." She also say, "May this day help you travel from the darkness into the light." Speaking to the victims, she acknowledged that she'd been convicted with Jeffrey Epstein, but didn't really admit her own role in what happened here and her own role with Epstein. That's something that the judge picked up. She said it was kind of a pattern of putting the blame aside, noted that in handing down her sentence. Maxwell, for her part, stood to receive the sentence as is customary, but pretty much just looked forward and didn't seem to have any sort of overt emotion or reaction to today's proceedings. And I will note, during the course of the victim's testimony, she also did not appear to ever look at them, just kind of leaned forward and looked forward and took some notes as well. This really does mark the final chapter of a multi-year investigation. She was first arrested nearly 2 years ago in seclusion at a home in New Hampshire, where she was at the time trying to cover up her phones in tinfoil. To give you an example of what happened that day, according to the FBI, and now nearly 2 years later, she'll spend the next 2 decades in jail.
And Tom, you know, we often hear the victim impact statements at this point in a criminal proceeding like this. What did we hear from the victims? What did they have to say to Maxwell today?
Well, it's some very powerful comments. All told, we heard from 4 of them in person. We also heard from an attorney representing Virginia Jeffrey Roberts, who wanted to speak on her behalf because Jeffrey couldn't make it today. We heard from her outside of court. Let's listen to Sigrid McCauley.
Today showed us that individuals can be held accountable irrespective of power and privilege. And today showed us that the chorus of voices of these survivors prevailed and showed accountability. It's really a victorious day for justice.
Aaron, the key message here today, both inside the court and outside the court, is this idea that all of these young women had family difficulties, may have had financial difficulties, and they were sought out by Maxwell and by Epstein to traffic them, to abuse them, and to take advantage of them, even threatening them at different points. It was a emotional hour or so inside federal court.
All right, Tom Winter for us outside the federal courthouse here in New York. Tom, thank you. Confusion in Texas after the Supreme Court.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.